Are you interested in learning cybersecurity? Are you wondering what are some of the tools of the trade? Or what you can you use to study? Well, tonight we are going to talk about that and much more, and we also have a very special guest on the show coming up. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Bearded IT Dad, where we give you advice and insight on how to grow your career in the IT field. My name's Dakota, and tonight we have a very special guest with us. She is Allie from Learn Cybersecurity, and we are going to be talking about tools of the trade and different learning platforms you can use to learn cybersecurity. Welcome, Allie. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for asking. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, for people who aren't familiar with who you are and what you do you mind giving us a little bit of background on what you do for a living?
Sure. So I currently work for the state of Oregon. I am kind of in between a role of an assistant Windows admin and a cybersec specialist. A lot of what I do is either dealing with the patching in our systems, or I'm also doing the forensics and lots of little bits and pieces. I have a very, very widespread duties of what I do right now. And I'm also a huge contributor to the IT community. I really like just working with the community, getting people into both technical roles and specifically more into cybersec roles. So I live over on the Learn Cybersecurity channel, where I'm pretty. I don't know what the best way to put it is, but I have a lot of videos on there that have introductions to different topics and more to come in the future.
Awesome, and I appreciate that. So, I kind of want to dive right on into it. If someone is interested in getting into a cybersecurity role that really doesn't have any previous experience, what is your recommendation for them? Where's the starting place?
Sure. Well, I think you really have to consider that a lot of cybersecurity roles are already a little more advanced than some of your help desk roles and basic entry level jobs. So it's not likely that you're going to jump straight into a cybersecurity career. It's more likely that you're going to start on an entry level where you can start learning the foundations, especially if you're not familiar with networking or computers in general. You'll really need to get those that foundational information in order to kind of start stepping into the sky world. Sorry, Kenobi has
Oh,
a toy. Let me grab that from him.
not a problem. Uh, and one thing, everyone's asked like, is like the security plus something you can dive right on into with no experience? What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, you definitely can. I started with my cybersec. That is where I started my entire IT career. And it's definitely helped me get to where I'm at, and I'm so glad that I started with it. But I started have with going into that. I had a lot of IT experience as far as like starting up my own VMs or doing some learning into like CTFs or capture the flags and stuff along those lines. So I had base knowledge in like programming and how computers work before going into that. But I don't think you necessarily have to. I think you can start with that as an entry level cert, but I think it might take you a lot more time if you're not familiar with those types of concepts.
So, would you say maybe if like someone just entering the field, they should go maybe try to get some of those fundamental skills and then really start branching into like a security plus?
Yeah, if you don't have any prior experience with technology and you're really starting from the ground level, then I would recommend doing something maybe like the A plus, which gives you the fundamentals. You also have even a step under that, if you can call it that, is the ITF, the ITF plus. It's the IT fundamentals that CompTIA has. There's also you don't necessarily have to go the route of CompTIA. I think that they have a good criteria and a good curriculum you can follow to keep in pace if you're like me and you really like having kind of a set program that you can work up, then I think that it's a great place to start. But also, just in your spare time, just working on things that you're interested in. So, if you're interested in programming, then start playing with different programming languages. Start your Hello Worlds and see, what you like. Because I think a lot of the time you can't really know exactly what it is you like until you start doing it. And I think that's true for everyone, especially myself. I really love the whole entire field of cybersecurity, but I didn't find the areas that I was really more interested in until I started doing things like the Security Plus and the CISA or the CYSA Plus. And you start understanding, okay, I'm really particularly interested in bug bounty hunting, or I'm really particularly interested in pen testing, or I really like the forensic side of things. And that's how you, by playing around with those different tools and the different the different aspects of it, you can really start seeing what actually tickles your fancy and what you should actually put more of your energy in and working on.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Now, one thing when we actually had you on the channel before, you mentioned some really fun and interesting ways to learn cybersecurity, like programs such as Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. What do you think about those kind of platforms? And do you have like some that you recommend over others?
Yeah, I would definitely say Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. They're both great. I played around more with Hack the Box, and also, those ones have free offerings that you can do that you can work at, so that for no cost you can just dive right in and start learning things. I think they're a great place to learn. But there's also other places where when you're still learning the fundamentals, there's a really great one called Over the Wire that has a ton of really, they're gamified, so they're games that you can kind of build your skills up on as you progress. Like Bandit's really good if you want to learn Linux command line, and there's a couple ones for like web app testing and stuff like that. So I think it really just depends on what you're interested in, because the try and hack me boxes are great if you're really interested in ethical hacking. I think they have some on forensics. I haven't seen it there, but there's so many resources out there. Also, if you really like gamified things, things like capture the flag are super fun, especially if you can get a group of people in doing it. We had weekly ones going on over in the IT career questions Discord, where we would meet up. I think it was either weekly or bi-weekly, just to do some boxes together and CTF challenges, where if you don't know what that is, capture the flag challenge is where you go and it's basically an environment that's meant to be broken, and you're meant to find how it's broken, and you can find it, or it's the identifier that you found the way it's broken is what's called a flag, which is usually a line of text that you copy and paste into the verification. But it's super fun, and it's a great learning mechanism for just teaching you how to poke around things.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Um, you know, I'm curious, and this might help some other people that are interested in getting into the IT field or cybersecurity side of it. What is a typical the path? Can you get certified and experienced and jump straight into a cyber job, or are you still need to do some more like help desk experience? What has your experience been?
I definitely think I will never say it's not possible to jump straight into one, because we've definitely seen cases where people who have no experience just kind of picked something up and ran with it. And I think that's great. I think more typically you'll see it happening from a entry level position, and building your way up. So you'll start on the help desk, you'll learn how to triage and do, handle tickets and work with end users, and then you'll slowly work your way up until you're working behind the scenes, behind the systems on what's going on. I know that's how I started. I didn't jump straight into a cybersecurity role. I jumped into a help desk hybrid role, where I was the tech for a agency, and we did all of their device deployments, and we made sure the users were all set up and so on and so forth. And that was really a very enrichment period of learning how to do all those things, learning how to use ticketing systems, learning how to communicate, how to work with non-technical users, and then how to work with really technical users. And you're trying to kind of be the go between those two. So I think more typically you'll start in a entry level help desk position and build your way up, and that's still great.
Awesome. And another route that I think is still quite popular is there's kind of the cybersecurity freelancers, I guess, the bug bug bounty hunters. I'm really curious of your opinion on that because to me that's kind of interesting. You know, kind of being a freelancer and being your own boss. Do you think is it more difficult than your typical cybersecurity job, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I love bounty hunting. I think that the bug bounty hunting is such a cool, it's such a cool area of cybersecurity that I would just one day I'm really going to focus in on because it is something I've always wanted to do. But basically, what I think is it's definitely something where you can do it and you can make money doing it for sure, but it's going to take a lot of patience and it's going to take a lot of time honing your skills and figuring out what's wrong. I know that a lot of bug bounty hunters from the write ups and stuff that I've read are really they talk a lot about there's a lot of time in between finding a thing. There's a lot of working at the same I think they're called parties. No, what are they called? You get invites, like different bug bounty platforms do it differently, but oftentimes you'll get an invite to either a private bounty program. But if you're a part of a program, you might be working at the same program or the same business for a while until you finally get the bounty, or and even then there could be a chance that other people get to it first. So it's a very different atmosphere than I think than of course a 9 to 5, and you have to have a lot of self-discipline to keep yourself going at it and not get discouraged when things don't go well. But it's definitely really interesting, and I absolutely love reading write-ups on it.
That's awesome. And we actually got a question in the chat. Someone was wondering where is a good place to start CTFs. You know, Hack the Box Santa Challenge was tough. So, do you have a like a list or go to place for CTFs you go to?
I worked on this one called GroupMe a lot. I think it was root.me. That's where we did uh, our group sessions and stuff like that. I think if you can find people who are interested in bounties, then, or sorry, back on the bug bounties apparently. If you can find people who are interested in doing CTFs with you, I think that's a really great way to do it because there's a lot of sharing that goes on with that. Also, Hack the Box, try Hack Me. Those are great places to start working because those are basically like CTF challenges. They're a little more advanced because usually you're trying to get root, and sometimes that's a little more intense than just finding finding a flag. But Group Me. Oh, there's a really good one that is really great for beginners. Oh, and I can't remember. It's on the tip of my Pico CTF, and they do it every year. Every spring, I believe they do a new one, and you can get to their old one. So Pico CTF is awesome because it's super beginner friendly, super gamified, and it's great. That's the one I that's usually the go to I do with beginners.
That's awesome. Um, do you mind highlighting some of like the important like individual skills? You know, if someone wanted to go learn, get into cybersecurity, is it important to learn Linux? What about like any scripting languages you recommend learning? Is there what are some of those recommendations you have?
Yeah, my answer would be different now that I've worked in a much more security based. Before, I would have said Python is a great language to learn, and it still is. But now that I've grown a lot more myself as a cybersec kind of enthusiast, I would say that PowerShell in Windows is really predominant, and it's a really good tool to learn. I think one of the things you have to have is you have to have an eagerness to keep learning. Cybersecurity isn't like a you're in it for the money kind of thing. It's very trying at times. It's very high stress at times. I remember one time we had just I think 2 or 3 weeks ago we had 3 laptops come up with malware, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming. We didn't know if it was widespread, and it was all hands on deck to figure out what was going on before anything escalated. And thankfully, it ended up being a false alarm, but you don't know that during the time, and it's very stressful. Um, and so I think that people really need to have an eagerness to kind of stick around and learn new things and have the patience to go through. kind of the same thing over and over again until you kind of get it down. And sometimes there's a lot of reading logs, which is another great skill to have. Learning how to read Windows logs is super great in my field specifically, especially in forensics. If you're interested in forensics, that's also a huge part of what we do. And I think, honestly, just being able to adapt and be open to new tools and collaborate with others.
Awesome. And you just kind of brought me to my next question is, there's different types, there's different job roles in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is kind of just it's one of those buzzwords, I feel, and there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different things. There's forensics, there's blue team, red team, there's penetration testing. You kind of diverge a little bit into some of the different possibilities for someone who knows they want to do something in security but doesn't know really what there is out there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and one of the main ones I think that people don't think about that I am a total nerd when it comes to, but policy, cybersecurity and policy is huge. Auditing, it's not just about penetration testing, but being in cyber auditing. For instance, in our state, the Secretary of State goes through and does cybersecurity audits for each of them, which my agency just recently went through, and those types of things. Policy, procedure, what are you doing? So that's another aspect where maybe you don't necessarily like the hacking or you don't like forensics, but you're really interested in cybersecurity on a policy level. That's a really great option for you. Forensics is really great if you're really interested in like how did people get in. Either blue team or forensics are a great option, because especially incident response and forensics, or DFIR, those are really interesting because you're reacting to an ongoing incident. Penetrations testing is really great, or ethical hacking is great when you want to be the perpetrator in a sense. Like, everyone put their white hats on. We don't want any black hats coming in, but those are really great ways to kind of actively get that rush of breaking into something. As long as you have permission, I can't stress that enough. And I think, what else do we have? We already talked about blue team. Um, there's just a lot. I mean, like you said, cybersecurity is kind of a buzzword. I mean, we're just thinking about how many different areas do we have in society that's based on electronic communication or data that's being transferred, so on and so forth. So it's just really widespread. I mean, there's just finance analysts who their job is cybersecurity for finance, specifically like finance companies. And that's really interesting too. So there's so much you really like think. That's why I think it's important to do something like an A plus or a CISA or something like that, because you're able to see all the different areas there are to the different roles in cybersecurity, and kind of see what piques your interest and see what opportunities are within that. Oh, I think you're muted for me.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
No worries.
Sorry about that. That's really, it sounds like it's a really diverse field, and there's a lot of potential for really anyone who is interested. There's different things to do and different aspects. It depends if you want that adrenaline rush, you want to be right there on that cutting edge, or if you want to take more of an offensive approach, or a defensive. Just depending on what you really want. Um, I'm curious, what are some of the tools you commonly use on a day to day basis? There's tons of different tools out there like Wireshark
Mhm.
and stuff like that. What are some of the tools you seem to frequently use, and what may be some tools that would be helpful for someone to study up on before entering the field?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it really depends on what role you're in. For my role specifically, I am in PowerShell, doing some things with that. SCCM, knowing kind of how that works, because that's where a lot of your patching comes from. So when you're doing patching systems and whatnot, you need to know how to use SCCM, and that's definitely one that I went into, like, into a help desk role not knowing much, and so transitioning to this new role, that was part of my training, was learning how to use it. And I think if I would have had prior knowledge, it would have been a lot easier transition. But and then for security stuff, Tenable is one that's really widely used. It's also called Nessus, I believe, but we call it Tenable. And I used that a lot before as Nessus in my VM boxes. I did that for a lot of the vulnerability scans and stuff, but it's used on a huge agency wide. I mean, we're talking state government level. So knowing how to use that and being trained in depth in that helps. Forensics, I mentioned earlier, Windows logs, especially if you are doing forensics for for me, for an agency that's widely only using Windows, then you should really get familiar with Windows logs. Um, Other tools, I would say Wireshark is a great one. I think really everyone should know how those works and how the what packet sniffing is, how those work. And learning some sort of programming language so you can think like a machine a little more. So for me, I learned C Sharp, C++, I learned Python, and just in things like the Linux command line or the Windows command line, knowing how to get to where you need to get, because sometimes that's all you got. um so on and so forth. I think there's a plethora of things that really just depends on what area you're interested in. And what I would suggest is, if you know what area you're interested, go look at what tools people in that industry or people like YouTubers are using for their different tools. That everyone has a video on it, so I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah, and one thing I like to stress a lot is there's a lot of great free resources out there. YouTube is a huge resource, and I still don't think it's utilized enough. Because
Mm-mm.
in all honesty, there is probably someone teaching the skill you're looking for free on YouTube. It
Mm-hmm.
might be slightly dated or something, but you still learn the skills. And that kind of leads me to what kind of ways do you study for your different things you need to learn in the IT field? Are you like an e-learning book? Like, what do you like to use?
So I am notoriously a book dragon, because dragons are way cooler than worms. I tend to always go to books, and there's a lot of great books out there. I recently just picked up a couple on. There's one called the Bug Bounty Boot Camp, because, like I said, I really want to get into bug bounty hunting. So, but also, like, for instance, right now I'm studying for my CISA, and what I like to do for any certificate that I'm going for, or any classes that I like to find a really good online class. So, for instance, I use a lot of Dion training for my studies, and I'm really hands on. So I tend to just like to spin up a VM and just start playing around and seeing, using test machines and stuff to kind of just feel my way through things. It's kinesthetic learning. Um, and you just kind of, like, the biggest thing, like you said, there's so many resources out there. You just need to kind of get into it to get started.
That's awesome. Um, and I know I've been asking tons of questions, and I really appreciate you, really putting out tons of useful information. What other information you have? Do you have any other recommendations for, people really looking to break into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, I think when in doubt, I always like watching, like, really motivational people who do things. So recently I had a video with Kanika Tolver, who is really awesome. And we've also been in contact with a lot of females in cybersecurity, because that's kind of my area, is helping women get into IT. But I think really, like, if you're interested in getting into IT, you have, like, clearly you're watching this on YouTube, like, you have the ability to get in somewhere else, or, watch another video and start learning. So either watch someone who's in your field doing something that you want to do, go watch, we have John Hammond, I think he's like a huge CTF guru, or the cyber mentor is a huge into penetration testing. He has his own penetration testing like company. There's so many people you can out there and watch, but don't just watch. You also have to dive in and start doing it. If you want to get an entry level, help desk job to get started, then start studying for your A plus or an equivalent certificate, or maybe look at going back to school if that's a viable option for you. I think that at this point, like a lot of people kind of get paralyzed with the resources and kind of their next step, and they forget to actually just start.
Absolutely. And really quick, we're actually doing a giveaway this week, and it ends tonight during this live stream for some free learning from TCM Security. Guys, if you haven't signed up for it, you only have like 10 minutes left to go sign up. So the link is down in the description, and you'll need the keyword cyber to sign up. So go over and sign up, and then jump right back into the video because we have a lot more great things to talk about. And you know talking more about the field. Do you mind kind of sharing your journey, like your personal journey into cybersecurity, and
Mm-hmm.
really how you got into the field?
Sure. Yeah, so I've always been interested in computers, mainly because I've been playing video games since I was about 6. And eventually, I think when I became 10, maybe 12, maybe in that range, I said, how do these things work? I want to make my own. So then I started working at programming, learning how to program. And then from there, I learned how to play with like Unity and put games together. And then eventually, I think I heard the buzzword ethical hacking, and I was just like, what's that? Ethical hacking? How do we combine these things? Because at the time I was going to school for criminal justice, and I thought that that's what I wanted to do with my life. But pretty soon after, I realized it wasn't exactly tickling my fancy, and I really liked computers. So finding cybersecurity, which is kind of the best of both worlds for me, I really fell in love with it and just started learning. I was working at a courthouse as a clerk, and I really wasn't enjoying it. And it was a work environment that wasn't really there to help me build up my skills. It was just there for me to be a warm body and fill a role. And I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So I moved on by starting to study for the Sec Plus, and I finished the Sec Plus within I think it was either 3 months of learning or 1 month. It was kind of a blur because I just stuck my nose in a book and started just memorizing and learning and getting my hands dirty with things. And by the end of that time period, I got my Sec Plus, and then I started applying for every tech job I could that was within the state government, because I already had. There's a great thing about state government benefits is they have the benefits, and so if you can stay within them, it's good. So that's why I chose to stay within the government, and I ended up getting my job at my current agency, and I worked for 2 years working as a what's called divisional tech, which means that I was there to field all my divisional users with their equipment, keeping up with all of their tickets and everything like that. And then a job rotation came up for kind of a tier above that, working with SCCM, forensics, Varonis, which is another really great tool, and a bunch of other things. And I just was in the middle of the pandemic, so I said, why not? And then I ended up getting the position, and I've been working in that ever since. So, and I did some stuff with Learn Cybersecurity and IT career questions, just kind of doing whatever I can to be a part of the community and seeing what was out there and staying relevant with all the information and all the new things that are coming out with technology. So now I'm kind of, in a sense, coasting, because I had a lot of personal events that happened that have really kind of, between that and between this new job and going to school full time, it's kind of enough for now. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm really happy with my position, and I'm just going to keep working at it. And I'm going to start picking up bug bounty hunting soon so that I can, just add something else under my belt.
That's awesome. And you kind of touched on, I think you and I kind of had this very similar job, past history where we were doing a job just to to make the money, and we weren't necessarily doing something we were happy with. Do you mind kind of sharing what really drives you on a day-to-day basis? What do you enjoy the most about your job? What?
Give me one
Yeah.
second. I'm gonna. So sorry.
God bless you. Oh no, no, it's all
Thank you.
good.
um, yeah, I really love what I do now. I love being a part of projects, project management, which is another cybersecurity job people don't talk about because it's a great one. And again, Kanika Tolver had a really great story about that. So check out that interview if you have a chance. But I really love what I do every day. I really love being a part of projects. I love learning new things. And every day right now is just a new challenge with new things, um, with just new experiences. And that really drives me. And I love the cybersecurity side of things. I love knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference. And I love being kind of the person who can say, like, oh, actually, you don't want to do that. And here's why. So, yeah, I think that a lot of it is just passion and a passion for learning.
Awesome. And actually, we had a question come in, and maybe you can answer it better than me. Is there any similarities between cybersecurity and physical security?
Definitely. I would say so. Excuse me. For one, the physical security, they're definitely in an umbrella. So physical security is still cybersecurity because you still have things like keypads, you still have cameras and all of that, which all have to run on a network, which all have to run, et cetera, et cetera. And physical security also includes things like, having a UPS and uninterruptible power source or power supply, because things like natural disasters happen. That's a security concern. If a natural disaster happens and we lose power, what does that mean for us? And I think people definitely don't necessarily understand the magnitude of that. And I think things like the A plus again cover those kind of things that you don't normally think about. Um, as far as more logical security things that are cloud based or network based, there's a huge thing to that. I mean, cloud security is huge now, but still, you have to have a place where the data sits. Where physical security, if you have a data storage place, what stops some Joe Schmo from going to the servers and starting to pull plugs or taking data from it, so on and so forth. So physical security is also really relevant.
And that kind of leads me to one of my questions is, what is maybe some of the most stressful moments you've had in working in the security field, because it can be really stressful. You talked earlier about, you had an instance where you thought there was malware on like a couple different devices. What's some of the most stressful things you've come across?
Yeah, no, I have actually a great story about this. It wasn't this last time, but the time before last, I had oh, it was one of those late mornings where, I had worked extra the night before, so I logged on a little later, and the first thing I logged into was Varonis had a ransomware alert. And basically, it found a lot of activity that indicated a ransomware attack. And this was my very first ransomware alert, and no one else was online. So, and I was literally probably at the time, like just maybe 2 weeks into my position. So in the moment, you say, oh, great, this is the big one. This is the one that everyone's so concerned we're going to get. And I have no one online right now to help me. So you kind of just start going through the motions of the steps, kind of like scattered, because if you've never done it before, you're not going to be super efficient going through the first time. And again, it ended up being just a false alarm, but it was very in the moment. It was way too early for something like that to have happened. And, and, it was really, really definitely a lasting experience that I will keep in my memory for quite a bit of time. And then we had the other occasion where we had already had a couple light security pings happening, meaning that we had a couple of red flags thrown up that maybe something was going on. And then all of a sudden we had 3 laptops report through the SCCM that they had malware. And it's like, okay, 3 laptops at once saying the same thing. What's going on? Is this spreading? how do we get this under control? And what that looks like, which I, again, will never forget, is just having, in this day and age, a Teams call with every one of my teammates in, little windows, people leaving their windows to go stand up and take a call or stuff, but everyone's here, all hands on deck, because we're just making sure that we're not going through a huge incident. And it can be high stress because there's a lot on the line, a lot of data, a lot of systems that could be lost. So but I also think it's good for the adrenaline junkies in us that are just like, this is amazing. I mean, it's terrible, but it's amazing, and I'm super fortunate to get this experience of going through this, even though it's a terrible situation. But I don't know. I think there's kind of a plus minus to it.
I can understand completely. I work for an ISP, also a government, publicly owned. So I'm actually a government employee as well. So I can relate as to some of the things. But when I deal with a little bit different disasters, I still have security, but when something goes down, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people without internet, television, phone. And, when you are, I'm the director of network operations, so I'm in charge of all our network operations. So when something goes down, it's on my shoulders to not only figure it out, but fix it right away, because, I don't want the angry mob coming after me of people. So it can be very high stress at times, but I find it very rewarding as well. So at the same times, and, those are great learning opportunities when stuff isn't going right. You learn a lot, and it's very useful to have gone through it and just to, know to keep a level head. We actually had another question in the chat. When studying for bug bounties, what is one of the things you focus on most of your time on?
Well, I mean, it depends. So a lot of times, some of like XSS, I think is what they said,
Yeah.
or XSS. Yeah, I said that right. They
Which I don't
there's
even know what that is, to be honest with you.
yeah, it's I think with bug bounties, there's some really great books that I would recommend to read that kind of give you an interesting perspective on it. But I think bug bounties are one of those cases where you can't just go and force your way into finding a bug bounty without knowing anything prior. Like, you have to have some knowledge of how things work in order to know what vector to look for and where to find the bugs. If I was to say what ones I focus on, when I was doing it, I wasn't really focusing on specific bug bounties. I was looking more at write-ups that they have. I think Hacktivity, it's in my brain somewhere. It's Hacktivity, which I think is HackerOne's platform for bug bounties. And then there's also, oh gosh, the other one is, I think it's just called Bug Bounty. But those are great places. They all have learning platforms when you can kind of learn what's called the low-hanging fruit, which is ones that are a little harder to get because there's so many people looking for them, but at least it gives you an understanding of how they work. I honestly couldn't name any off the top of my head that I specifically looked for because I wasn't super active in doing the bug bounties, but it's something that I want to be active in.
Awesome. And I actually have a personal question. Do you have like a favorite YouTube or also podcast that you like to listen to, related to the security field? I have a couple of them. Like, I listen to like Security Weekly and stuff like that, but I'm curious what you might have.
I love Security Weekly. Security Weekly is great. Besides that, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts in security anymore other than Security Weekly because there does have to be a good work-life balance, especially when you're working 40 plus hours a week. It's good to have kind of a happy, like, okay, this is not the time for security anymore. But when I am learning, when I am actively doing it, I think John Hammond is one of them that I follow a lot. Network Chuck, the Cyber Mentor has a lot of really great materials, and he has a lot of courses that he does on his own. So typically, if I'm finding enough time to do that, and finding enough time to study something outside of my school curriculum, I'm usually around his site. And then I think, um, who else do I watch? I think Security Weekly is such a great one. Other than that, I think it really depends on the field that you want to be in.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Security Weekly, it's not just one podcast show. They have 5 different ones, and it's a really great thing. Even if you don't know what they're talking about, just to kind of tune in and start listening to. I have like a half an hour drive on my way to work, so I find myself a lot of times listening to their shows on my way in. They have one called Paul Security Weekly, which is really kind of relaxed and low key, and I think personally it's one of my favorites. And it's just it's nice, something nice to have in your ear, like when you're doing dishes. Just be listening and you'll start picking up on little things here and there. And
Mm-hmm.
I also like keeping current with whatever issues are going on in the world. So
Mm-hmm. And you can usually sometimes they'll do some good podcasts, like hour-long segments about certain types of things. Like if you hear of a specific hack that happened or something like that, you can bet that there's going to be an hour-long podcast that's breaking down exactly what happened, what was the results, how was it responded to, etc. And so that's really good. If you're looking at forensics, if you're looking at penetration testing, all of that, it's good to get that kind of intel.
absolutely, we actually have a question. I think it's directed towards you. What kind of hobbies do you have outside of IT, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, of course. No. And see, this is why I totally want to start a channel that's just me, like in my day, because I do so many different things that's why it's so hard to sit down and focus on one thing now. I really love painting. I've been into miniature painting lately. One of my coworkers taught me how to do it, and I've really enjoyed doing that. I've also started watercolor painting. I have a 3D printer, and I come up with all sorts of shenanigans with that. I also, hike. I have a dog named Kenobi, the General Kenobi, and he occupies a lot of my time as well. So yeah, just kind of things like that. And so those are usually the things I'm doing when I'm not on the computer.
Awesome, I appreciate that. uh Someone is asking if that's a ITIL cert behind you.
Yep, that's the foundational cert. I when did I get that? Yeah, so that's from September of 2020. So about a year ago, over a year ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I have above me, it's a little hard to see because they're way above, but I do have my other, I have my Security Plus, A Plus, Network Plus on there, soon to be joined by my CISA, and then I'm also getting the Project Plus next, and the Pen Test Plus, because it's all part of my curriculum, so.
No wonder you have no free time. You sounds like you are constantly busy.
Yeah. Although I did find time this week to play some video games for the first time in forever, and that has been super rewarding. So I'm just trying not to make a habit of it because once you start, it's really hard to stop.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I kind of want to touch on, because burnout is real in this field, and I don't think people realize it until it's too late. What are some things you've kind of done to help keep that work-life balance?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is I've really recently gone through kind of more, I guess, a journey with my own mental health. Earlier this year, I really struggled with it, and I was realizing that I was putting a lot of really ambitious goals on myself that had no real reason for them whatsoever. And so I was causing a lot of unnecessary stress. For instance, I really wanted to finish my degree. I think someone asked, was it WGU? Yes, I am going to WGU. Um, and I put, oh, by the end of this year, I want to have my bachelor's and be done with my bachelor's. And I asked myself, because it was causing a lot of stress on top of getting married and going to school and working full time, it was causing a lot of stress for me to try and figure out how I was going to finish so many of those credits this year. And I asked myself, I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the difference between me getting it now and me getting it next year? There is no difference. So why am I putting this strain on myself? And, it kind of puts things into this perspective. It's like, oh, so I'm just setting unrealistic expectations for myself, and then I'm getting mad at myself for not doing it. And I feel like that's where a lot of my burnout comes from. Even with the Learn Cybersecurity channel, I love making content for the community. I really do. It's one of the things that really drives me to learn more, is to be able to share more with other people. But I haven't been really feeling great about making videos, and for me was just like, why am I putting so much pressure on myself when I'm not enjoying it anymore? And it's not like I'm using the YouTube revenue. I clearly have another job. Why am I stressing myself out over these things? And I think that that's where a lot of people's burnout comes from, is one, they're not doing things that they actually like doing, and two, they're setting up unrealistic standards for themselves, and then they're mad that they're making it. So I think it's really important to really evaluate why you think the way you do, or why you're doing the things you do, especially if you're in a job you don't like. Why are you there? There's literally, especially right now in the state that the things are in here, at least, like, there's so many jobs available, and there's so many places that are just looking to hire people. So why would you be doing a job you don't want to do? It's just, for me, it's just, life is way too short to even consider working at a job for longer than you need to if it's not what you want to do.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have a lot of WGU alumni in here. And I'm kind of curious, what drove you to go to WGU? I've heard a lot of great things. It sounds like a very tech oriented university, but do you kind of mind sharing for those people that might
Yeah,
not know?
absolutely. Yeah, and there's I also have a video about it called a WGU story. Um and I was supposed to make another part to it, but again, we went back to the whole mental health thing. So but no, I chose WGU because I decided that I wanted to go back to school. It was at the very beginning of the pandemic. I had a lot more time because I wasn't commuting anymore. And at the time, the position I was in was that first divisional tech position, where I just found that I had a lot of downtime that I couldn't fill productively. So for me, I'm very eager to kind of move to my next project and move to the next thing. So I decided to start looking for schools, but I knew I wanted a school that would let me do it at my own pace and that would be relatively cheap. So that way, if I only did a couple credits or if I had to go back, it wouldn't kill me financially. WGU offered also a cybersecurity degree, which is what I was looking for specifically because cybersecurity is a growing industry. It's a relatively new industry, so there's not a ton of certificates, or sorry, not a ton of degrees out there for it. So that was another huge factor into it. And I really like the idea of having a program mentor who could help me, like, just check in with me and see where I'm at, because that gives me a lot of drive too, knowing that people are kind of checking in and communicating with me. So all of those factors kind of went into my decision to go with WGU, and I'm really glad I did because I've already accelerated in my certificate collection, which you don't need to do, but I'm kind of an overachiever, so it's really nice to add to it. I think you might be muted again.
I'm sorry.
No
Still getting
worries.
used to this new software. And I'm really happy you kind of dive into that. But that always also leads me into one of my biggest debates I always get into: certificates or college education.
Mhm.
What do you think really matters the most? I want your opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't think either of those matter. I've actually had really in-depth discussions with my boss about it, and my boss is like probably one of the best bosses I've ever had and will ever have. But we had a discussion about me, because the position that I was going for, or the position I'm in now, I didn't know if I would qualify for it because I was doing a rotational for it, training for it. But long story short, we had a huge discussion about what does it look like not having the degree and what's more important. Really, the most important thing is the experience. So it was the 2 years of experience that I got just being in that div tech role that led me to the position I have now. And so I think it doesn't matter what gets you to that point, right? So you can easily just get a certificate, which is like a fraction of the cost that it takes to go to school. Um, to get an entry level role. That's just the way it is, because really, an entry level role, you don't even need school to get into or a certificate, but it usually helps be above the other candidates. But I think some people benefit from having a really strict curriculum that is the building blocks for how they learn, and a lot of people who do really well in school but don't do well in certificates because they're just not good in that kind of environment. So I think it depends on the kind of learner you are, and you have to understand what kind of learner you are. And if you're considering a career in technology or IT or in cybersecurity, learn what kind of learner you are, because it's going to help you instrumentally in throughout your entire career.
That is great advice, and I don't think I could have kind of explained that any better myself. That's really what I always say. Because there's tons of different types of learners. Myself, college just wasn't for me. I did about a year of college out of high school, and I don't know if it was just because I was too young or what. I just could not make it. And I'm proof that you don't need a college degree to succeed in this field. I was able to hit a director level position within 3 years. Not typical. I wouldn't expect that, but it is proof that it can happen.
Mhm.
Um, and all I had was my A plus, which is even more crazy, I think. And I love my job. It is really my dream job. But for some people, you really do need that structured learning environment to succeed, and that's where college really stands out from a degree, because you have to be super motivated and super disciplined to study for a certificate. And it's really, there's no one holding you accountable. It's really on you and your drive. So
Mhm.
but again, at the end of the day, you really don't even need that certificate. Soft skills, I think, play a huge thing, and that's, I don't think I can say
Mhm.
that ever enough, is the soft skills in this field are major.
Yeah.
So
I was just gonna say you got me thinking too about it is I think another really great experience that college can get you if you go in person is a lot of social skills. I think that
absolutely.
sometimes you can tell when not necessarily when someone hasn't been to college, but when someone hasn't been around or working in an environment where you're working with a lot of individuals and people, because you have to figure out how to communicate with others. And like you said, soft skills are all that is. And you can be the most technical, logical person and have all the knowledge, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't communicate it, which is why I think people should practice technical writing. Which what I mean by that is producing technical writing that end users who aren't technical can understand. um, a lot of companies look for this in candidates, and specifically the job that I got that got me into IT, a huge part of it was being able to interpret these different incidents that happen throughout the week and turn them around to end users and executives, which you kind of consider executives at a non-technical level. um, but it was basically saying, this incident happened, here was the result of it, here's what's happening, but how do you say that on a non-technical level? How do you explain what a server is, or certain management systems that you need to be able to replicate out to end users? And it's just such a great skill to have, and being able to communicate and have meetings with people and stuff, that's going to be wherever you go in cybersecurity. That's going to be a part of it. You're going to have to talk to someone somewhere. So sorry, introverts, I'm there with you, but you got to do it.
Absolutely, and I definitely wasn't a people person. I think when I first started, I mean, I've always had that, people skills and those soft skills, and that's really, I think, what landed my first job is my people skills, because I had no experience, I had no certifications or college degree, but
Hmm.
my people skills really helped me. So that is huge. And yeah, gone are the days of the basement IT department that reeks
Hmm.
of old pizza and smelly socks. Um, and I hope you still have. We're not taking up too much of your time. I
No,
hope you still
I'm
have
here
some
as
more
long
time.
as you need me.
Okay. Well, I have a couple more questions. I there's been this huge push to the cloud, and I don't know how much of it you guys are doing, but how is that changing the cybersecurity landscape? We're going. It feels like we're going from more physical on-prem to the cloud every day, and
Hmm.
does that require any changes in cybersecurity for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, with any new technology, cybersecurity becomes a whole new ballgame. Um, it's not as we definitely have aspects of the cloud in my agency, but one of the things I wanted to touch on just tangentially is that working private versus public is really different. I think that there's a lot more room to grow, or well, there's a lot of room to grow in both of them. But I think when you're working for the public, like I am, when you work for the government, there's a lot of rules that have to be accounted for. So you don't necessarily get the best of the best in the working in the government. You kind of get whatever the government's willing to produce. So a lot of times, like for instance, a lot of our systems are really far behind. It's kind of the stereotypical joke, right? That the government's slow because we're on age-old machines, which it's true, but it's because there's so many um, there's so like legislation that has to go by in order for us to move on. So a lot of it depends on how legislation goes before we can do, and that just all takes time. But going back to it, I think that the cloud is huge. And if you want to get into cybersecurity and you just want to get into the most like, you're like, I want to learn new things, but I also want to you just be wherever the money is, then go to cloud computing because that's definitely where the money is right now. So much of it is changing. It is so new. No one knows what's going on. So, well, they do, but we're slowly building up to figure out how things work, and it's one of the most in demand fields right now. So I think I couldn't even tell you how vast just cloud computing is, and cyber in the cloud is, because there's just so much to that and that work. I think that there's a lot of great, I know CompTIA has certificates for it. I believe that uh, what's the other vendor? Cisco. I believe that they have some certificates on it too. So that's another area that's really interesting, and that I think a lot of people would find fascinating and a great place to work, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We have another great question here in the chat. Talking about certs, should we take the EJPT, CHS, CEH, sorry, or something like the OSCP, or directly OSCP, or maybe something else?
Honestly, the one that I'm like, if I was going to take one next that wasn't in my curriculum, I would take the Cyber Mentors next, the Cyber Mentor certificate training that he has. I've been following that for a while, and it's widely becoming industry recognized. But even though it's not as industry recognized, the amazing thing about it is like getting the certificate's one thing, but Heath really sets you up to learn everything you need to know to get into it, and it's all hands on. So it's not like any of the other certificates that I think are ever out there. I mean, it's really hands on, it's really instructive, and I believe he starts you from A to B, from ground up. And he has so much of the free content too out there as well. So it's just, I think that that's honestly a really great place to start. um, if you're looking to get into like ethical hacking and stuff like that. I think the CEH is kind of losing its grounds in the industry. And so I think a lot of people will tell you that the CEH isn't worth it. I personally don't have it, and I'm not interested in getting it, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. If you look at that and find that it's really interesting and you want to you want to specifically get the objectives onto that, then go for it. But I think that personally, I've seen better certificates out there that are more in my line of thinking and more in I think where the industry is heading.
Absolutely, and that's really great advice. I really appreciate it. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Anything related to the IT field, we're definitely here to help and answer those questions. And you've really actually gone through a lot of the questions I had and have given some really great advice. I kind of want to give a second to shout out your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
If people are more interested to find out more about you and your contribution, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I am at Learn Cybersecurity on YouTube. I haven't been posting as often there because it takes a lot to make videos. But you can also find me on Twitter at Allie Hacks, which I think is up in the little corner up here. And also on Instagram. I don't think I'm on any other socials. I've become kind of a hermit as I've been working this position. I've been like, I don't have time for anything else. I'm just gonna focus on this and my dog, and that's gonna be where I'm at.
I understand completely. I mean, I work full time. I got 3 kids. I run the YouTube channel, and I also help my wife run a business. So it's finding that work-life balance is not there. I just say it's not there. But
I couldn't imagine having kids.
yeah.
My dog is enough, and he doesn't even that needy. So
Oh yeah, and I have 3 dogs as well. So I have 3 fur babies
one for
and
each
3.
kid.
Yeah, exactly. So, someone's remembers you from Twitter. That's awesome. What Do you have any other advice? You've given us so much great advice, but anything else you want to share with the community? To encourage people to really follow their passion.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this not necessarily cybersec related, but I think this can basically be transcribed to all job fields. But there's this really cool book I read called Show Your Work, and I can't remember the author off the top of my head. But it's called Show Your Work, and it's basically about how regardless of what you do, you should be like writing about it, making videos about it, something. It doesn't have to be videos, it doesn't have to be writing. It could be, calligraphy or I don't know, hieroglyphs, however you want to do it. But in a way, you should be showing your work. So that way, one, you can look back and reflect on your own work. But also so that, you can communicate with other people and have the ability for people to give you feedback on things. I think we kind of have this tendency to want to kind of keep things until we can master it, or at least until we can show it and be proud of it, or whatever. But I think even things like if you're doing programming languages and you're just learning hello world, share that code with the world. If you're just learning about bug bounties and you want to do a write-up about what you're learning, do it. If you want to make a blog, do it. If you want to make a YouTube video about your journey, do it. Because I think that we gain so much from showing our work that and putting it out in the universe that we just can't get if we keep it to ourselves. So that's kind of my biggest thing that I've learned. I've been doing a lot of um, blog posts and stuff, and I should take my own advice and actually publish them so people can see them. But just getting it out and writing it, especially like if you're into bug bounty hunting, doing write-ups and stuff, that's going to be a normal part of what you do anyway. So getting that practice is a good way to even start with that. So that's kind of my biggest piece of thing is just don't be afraid to show your work. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and speak with the community, because people are going to love to see it. I mean, I never thought that people would like to hear about my experiences of things, but yet here I am on, being interviewed about certain things. So it's just really important to do.
Awesome. And that is great advice, and that's kind of actually one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel, is to document what I was doing and what I was learning. And then it evolved as I started helping more people out and realized I really enjoyed it. And I think it's kind of goes with the IT field. That personality, I think, kind of grows on you. And you'll find a lot of people in the IT field like helping other people. And what I'm trying to get at is don't be afraid to ask questions when you're brand new in the IT field, because you learn a lot. And most of the people are more than happy to share with you. So absolutely.
And I want to see some more female techs out there. Come on, let me get more representation.
Yeah, that there has been a big drive for that in the IT field lately. And there's tons of jobs out there right now. I think at least what I've been seeing lately is there's never been a better time to get into the IT field. I think also the barrier to entry is really low right now. And if this is something you've been debating about or something you've been thinking about, it's just time to pull the trigger. Don't wait to get certified. Don't wait. Just start applying now. That's the biggest advice I have to people. I used to think, well, I had to have my A+ before I could even start applying for jobs. And then I finally just said no, and I just started applying, and I got my first job in the field. It wasn't until several months later I got my A+, and then that's the only true certificate I've carried since. So it's all about your personality and your skills and just putting yourself out there, because you never know who else is applying. You might not be very well qualified for the job, but you might be the most qualified candidate that applied, and they just really like your people skills. So
Yeah, and like we talked about, anyone can teach you the technical stuff, but it's harder to teach you the soft skills, because that's not taught, that's just learned.
absolutely. I know you've already talked about some of the books you've been reading, but we do actually have a question about any great book recommendations, specifically cybersecurity book recommendations. And I see you getting all excited, because I know you have quite a few recommendations.
I do. I have I have too many. So it really depends on what area you're looking at. I picked up a really good one that I'm super excited to get into. It's called Bug Bounty Bootcamp. Um, what I can do is in the comments of this video, I'll put the name of the book and the author, so that way anyone who's interested can find my comment under Allie, and or might be under Cybersecurity. I don't know what I'm under anymore, but you'll find me down there, and I'll have all my book recommendations. But just to name a few. There's a lot for ethical hacking that are out there. There's like the Hacker's Playbook, which is a little more advanced, but there's some beginner hacker books. There's I'm like looking at my bookshelf so I can see Penetration Testing by Georgia. I can't remember her last name, is really good. The Web Application Hacker Handbook is really good. File System Forensics is really good. Then I also have a lot of, I really love seeing books from like the newer books coming out from different up and coming cybersec professionals. So I have some on like PowerShell, Python. I have Cyber Jiu-Jitsu, which is really interesting. Bug bounty hunting is another one that's really good for bug bounties. Um, I really should just take a picture of the shelf and put it on there, but it's but there's just some really great ones. I mean, that's just how I learned. Like we always joked in the Discord that I'm the Hermione Granger of books, so or of the cyber world. So yeah, just and just whatever you're interested, just see what are the top books here. I have a video too, I think, on my channel that's my top 5 books for beginner hackers, but that list has totally changed now that I've read way more books. So
Absolutely, and like Allie was saying, she's gonna put that information down in the comments, or even if you want, Allie, you can send that to me, and I can put that in the video
sure.
description. It's a great resource to have, I think, and yeah, this isn't me asked, and he's already asked me this question, or he or she, but do you think IT is a trade? What's your opinion on that?
I think it could be considered one. It's it's hard to call it a trade because there's so many transferable skills into other careers, and with a specific trade, you don't normally have that. But I don't know. It would be hard to peg it as a trade. I could see the argument for it, but I would more say so. It's more of a foundational thing because you can take it wherever.
Good, good answer. I like it. Well, really quick, I've totally forgot to announce our winners for the TCM security training giveaway. For those of you who don't know, we had a drawing going all week to receive some free TCM training, and Amanda B and Jose M are 2 winners this week. So congratulations. I will be sending you guys emails with the email address you signed up for the giveaway and information on how to receive your vouchers. So congratulations, you two.
Yay.
Really quick, I want to give everyone a chance, if they have any more last questions before we wrap up this live stream, to go ahead and drop them in the chat.
Rapid
And
fire.
rapid fire questions. Yeah, come on, guys. Any questions you might have? It doesn't have to be cybersecurity related. It can be just IT career related, or just really anything. We've answered quite a broad amount of questions tonight. And Allie, you've been a super useful resource. I really thank you for coming on again. So
Yeah, happy to be
hopefully,
here.
yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I know you're super busy right now. Maybe after the first of the year, we can get together and do some more of these.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, and like I said, there's gonna be more content coming my way soon, and maybe we'll have a chance to do a couple collabs over on Learn Cybersec for a bit.
All right. Well, rapid fire here. Favorite computer movie?
Favorite computer movie? Is that just sci-fi in general? Um,
I think that's a safe bet.
so I'm kind of a huge Star Wars fan, just a little bit. My dog's name is Kenobi, but um, I would say one that I think people don't like, an oldie, but I just love to pieces, is called the Last Starship Fighter, or the Last Starfighter. The Last Starfighter is what it's called. And that one's really good.
You mentioned your dog's name's Kenobi. Are you excited for the Disney Plus series that's coming out?
Oh, of course I am. I will. People are always like, "Aren't you sick of them like driving Star Wars to the ground?" I'm like, "No, I will eat it all up. I love
Yeah,
it."
exactly. Um, and my answer to favorite computer movie, if you're talking like a computer movie, I think it was what was it called? I think it was War Games. It was
Uh-huh.
an old '90s movie. I think that's what really actually piqued my, like I remember being young watching that movie, and I just thought that was so cool. And it
Mhm.
really was a hacking movie if you think about it at its
Really,
core.
it was. Yeah. Was
So
that the one where he totally hacked into like a nuclear power plant or a bomb of some sort? I can't remember.
yeah, it was. He hacked into like this supercomputer that controlled like interconnect ICBM missiles and stuff like that, and it did this war game simulation, and the computer thought it was real and tried to start launching all these nukes. I just thought it was a
And
cool.
that's a really funny thing because that's actually when a lot of the after that movie came out, that's when a lot of legislation came out for hacking based stuff or computer based stuff. That's when a lot of like the Computer Protection Act or whatever that one is that came out. It came out after that one because people were scared that that could actually happen.
Absolutely. And then I'm also a sucker for it because I do believe that was filmed in the Pacific Northwest. I think it was filmed in like Washington or something, or part of it. So anywho,
That's cool.
uh, other questions. Do you watch any anime?
I have, yes. I actually the most recent one I finished was Demon Slayer, and I really liked that. It was amazing.
Myself, I don't watch any anime. My kids do. I just never really got into it much. So, um, got someone in here who's obsessed with Star Wars. Almost named their daughter Leia. Her mom shot that down right away. That is awesome.
Let me tell you, I will probably, if I have a boy, it's totally gonna be Luke.
Luke, not no
Yeah.
no Han.
No, no, it's gonna
No,
be Luke.
Luke. Nice.
That way I'll
Uh,
have Luke and Kenobi. It'll be great.
that's awesome. What's the most realistic hacking movie you've ever seen?
I don't think I've ever seen a realistic one.
Not movie, but Mr. Robot. Have you seen Mr.
Mr.
Robot?
Robot. That's very. I haven't seen it, but I've seen clips of it because it was always sent to me by my family. Like, do you do this? But,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I definitely think that they did their research on that one.
Yeah, I mean they use things like bash bunnies. They use a rubber ducky. They use not only physical tools but actual, real world stuff. I actually became really obsessed, and I kind of really disappointed they ended the series. But yeah, for me that's one of the most realistic ones. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're gonna wrap up the live stream here. It's been a hour long stream. I really appreciate you taking the time, guys. I put the link down in the chat where to go find Allie. I will, after the live stream's over, there'll be links in the comments and or the description as well to find more great resources. Do you have any other closing notes you have for everyone?
Nope. I think I'm where I'm at. I might say some geeky Star Wars things, so we should probably cut
It sounds good to me.
it.
We covered so much great information. Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for taking the time out. I know you've been super busy, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some really great information. So,
Happy to
uh,
do it. Hopefully, we
uh,
can do it again soon.
absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the bell icon, subscribe, and hit the bell icon because we are going to be releasing some really cool videos soon. Our next video comes out Sunday with another giveaway, and as always, we do our live streams every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. So, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy.